War Room Sports, www.warroomsports.com. What? Ain't no more to it.
Welcome to Inside the War Room on War Room Sports TV. I'm Devin McMillan, the angry Philly fan, and I'm here with my co-host, Jimmy Williams, a.k.a. King Jimmy Joe Ferrer, B. Austin, a.k.a. the Ghost of Juan Castillo, and Akil Bayan, a.k.a. the Coach. All right, we're here with you today on this particular episode to talk about the Lakers' shocking move of firing Coach Mike Brown after only 5 games of the NBA season. Fellas, let's start with Jimmy on this one because Jimmy's the resident Laker fan. I know that you were critical of Mike Brown, as all of us are, were on our show and wherever else we get to talk sports. But as a Laker fan, I know you wanted this to happen, but were you shocked when the news actually came down yesterday that he was fired?
I don't know if I can call it being shocked or more excited. And it wasn't that, listen, I don't think he should have been hired in the first place. That was my issue. I supported him last year because he was the coach, but I was upset when he was hired initially. I always wanted Brian Shaw to be the guy. So for me, it wasn't that, hey, I was shocked. It was more like excitement. Like, okay, let's get Shaw and do what we should have did in the first place. I mean, this guy was supposed to be a defensive guru, and our defense stunk. It was sanitation. So as many people complained about the Princeton offense, I personally was looking at the defense and how hard it was, and I said, this guy has to go at this point. 5 games, I mean, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, this team is the Lakers. This is not the New Jersey Nets or the Brooklyn Nets or whoever. We're supposed to win. So for me, let's just get the ball rolling in the right direction and do what we should have did to begin with.
Yeah, the feeling that I had initially was, like I said a few seconds ago, we've all been critical of Mike Brown. I know I have. But at the same time, I was kind of surprised when the move came down. But I do get that especially from Laker fans. The sentiment is kind of like, if you want to liken it to the situation in Philadelphia with the Eagles and Andy Reid firing defensive coordinator Juan Castillo, it's kind of like, okay, you're firing the guy now that you probably shouldn't have hired in the first place. So you're kind of, remedying the wrong that you made a while ago, and you're kind of admitting to everybody that you made the wrong move. B. Austin, what did you think when you heard the news? Do you think it happened too quick, or?
I think that, besides the fact we live in a society of immediacy, I have to agree with my esteemed colleague, Jimmy Williams. Dude should have never been hired in the first place. When you hang your hat on defense and the issue with a team that has that much talent is defense, I don't know. I guess there was something that Kupchak saw that indicated that it wasn't going to get much better. Scoring when you have Steve Nash, Kobe Bryant, Dwight Howard, and the bench that they had, I don't think scoring would have been a problem throughout the course of the season. They had a game where they put up 106. They've had several games in the 90s. They can win, but the defensive breakdowns, again, Mike Brown hangs his hat on defense and his ability to interview with GMs, and he got one of the two right apparently. So. Good riddance. Good riddance.
I've had some conversations with Akil on this, so I pretty much know that you also have the sentiment of they probably shouldn't have hired him in the first place. But after 5 games, were you surprised that the move was made?
Yes, I was surprised, being as though that was the quickest termination of a coaching job ever, as opposed to they had Dolph Shays, I think in 71-72, he resigned after 1 game. So that was a record for that. Like the rest of you alluded to, I don't think they should have hired him in the first place. When I look at Mike Brown, I look at the Wade Phillips effect, whereas he is a very good defensive mind for the NBA, but in terms of motivating talent and in terms of, I think, the talent respecting him, in terms of him being an offensive coach, I think he's very weak in all of those areas. I mean, he started out as a video guy, which is cool. So it shows that, he's willing to put the hours in. He's a hard worker, good communicator. But as Delonte West pointed to, or as Shaq pointed to in the Shaq book, through Delonte West, that he didn't hold LeBron James accountable. He was probably scared of LeBron James. He didn't coach them up, so basically Cleveland just kind of had their success through whatever success LeBron James had. And here with the Lakers, now you have 4 possible Hall of Famers or 3.5, depends on if you think Powell's going to make it. He was just the wrong guy. So
yeah. Now speaking of that, like, let's talk about Mike Brown for a minute before we get back into the Lakers in general. He does own one of the greatest winning percentages in NBA history as a head coach. But do you guys think that somebody else would be willing to give the coach a chance that got fired after 5 games? Also,
I absolutely believe that they'll give him he'll get a second chance, because a lot of folks are lacking common sense. I think that what he's built in terms of a reputation and what he can point to in Cleveland is going to lead folks to give him another shot. I definitely believe he will be coaching again in the NBA.
Okay, what do you think? You think somebody will give him a shot?
I think he'll get a shot, not on a contender. I think he'll get a shot on a really bad team. Let's say, Michael Jordan may even hire him with the Bobcats if they don't win. I'm trying to think of some other bad teams. Maybe in Sacramento he'll get a shot, because what will happen is he'll be the top assistant somewhere, but then when that coach gets fired, he'll be the interim coach. And if that bad team, if he makes them a marginal team, he'll probably get an extension on a year-to-year basis. So, but I think the 4 guys here on this panel are better coaches than Mike Brown, to be honest.
Jimmy, what do you think as far as his future is concerned? I know I was going to ask you, would you hire him? But I pretty much know the answer to that. But do you think that someone else will give Mike Brown a chance?
I mean, absolutely. He'll definitely get a chance. And I just don't think this was the right fit for him at this time. Because what I noticed about coaching, if you look at a lot of coaches and what they go through in terms of successes and failures before they really find their niche and get into a groove, so to speak, they go through a couple jobs. So I'm not saying that eventually he won't become that coach that can be a great coach. We never know. We'll never know how he develops his, the structure and what he wants to do as a coach. But for this team right now, he's the wrong guy, because this team is supposed to win now. This isn't about building a team to be competitive in years to come. It's about winning right now. I mean, This is the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, they're supposed to win. This is not the Bobcats.
It's interesting that you make that point that they're supposed to win now, because, of course, last night they went into battle with interim coach Bernie Bickerstaff. And the first game after Mike Brown is fired, they win by 24 points over the Golden State Warriors. But the fact that they are supposed to win now, it gives you the indication that Bernie Bickerstaff, this job is going to be short-lived for him. Candidates that they're looking at, of course, Brian Shaw, because that's who Kobe Bryant wanted on the bench in the first place before Mike Brown was hired. But now you're getting D'Antoni's name in the mix, and you also hear that Phil Jackson says that he's open to coming back, which doesn't surprise me at all, because to me that's kind of Phil's MO. He kind of waits till a team is championship ready, but they're kind of in turmoil, and then he comes in and does his little Zen effect and gets them over that hump. Who do you guys think is the front runner for that job, and who do you think is the best fit? I guess Jackson would be the best fit. But
when you say front runner, are you speaking in terms of who the Lakers organization really, really wants in that place, or who's more willing to step in?
I'll speak on them both, because actually I've seen news reports that says the Lakers actually favor D'Antoni, and I wouldn't think that would be the case if you have Phil Jackson, who's already won X amount of championships with this organization.
Common sense. Yeah, common sense would lend me to believe that Phil Jackson can pretty much name his time, place, and opportunity. If he says he's coming back, they're going to give him the job. I think obviously Brian Shaw being in his position, he'd take $5 an hour to coach the Lakers. And then, you've got D'Antoni. D'Antoni is a fit in terms of his NBA experience and in terms of the personnel. I think you would need at least 2 seasons to lock in defense with him for it to work, because he's obviously not going to focus on defense. So you need to know what you get. I don't think that wins. I don't think any of them put them in contention for a championship right now, but I think Phil Jackson would give them the closest shot this season and going into next.
Well, this team has to go through the growing pains of learning how to play together in the first place. I mean, that's why you'll have some people out there saying that they think they pulled the trigger on Mike Brown too quickly because, first of all, you have a new crop of guys learning to play together. Secondly, you have the injuries that they have. I mean, you have Nash out with injury. You have Kobe and Dwight Howard playing through injuries. So, I don't know, but it all goes back to the point that Jimmy made. This team was built to win right now. So I don't think they even get that leeway of learning to play together and having that year of failure, kind of like the Miami Heat did, because this team is much older than
Dev, I was going to chime in. I think what you have here is another Jerry and Jimmy factor, kind of like with the Cowboys, where the owner didn't get along with the coach/GM. But it's coming down to Jerry Buss and his son Jim Buss. Jerry Buss, there are reports that Jerry Buss made this move, that Jim Buss was the one that handpicked Mike Brown, and there's also a rift between Jim Buss and Phil Jackson. And Jim Buss wants to prove that he can win titles or another one without Phil Jackson. Jerry is above that, Jerry Buss, so he's thinking like, let's just bring Phil in, win some more titles. So that's how DAntoni or Antoni gets thrown into the mix. Antoni has never won. He's never been to the finals. Yeah, they'll look good on paper in the regular season, but you see what happened with the Knicks. You see what happened with Phoenix. I think he just makes great regular season teams that can get to a certain point in the playoffs, and that's it. So I don't know why Antoni would even be in the argument. He's not going to win you a championship.
Before we go to Jimmy, Akil, explain to the audience why you and B. Austin call the man Antoni, because they probably just think you're saying his name wrong.
Yes, we know the coach's birth name is Mike D'Antoni, but because he has a reluctance to coach the defensive end of the floor, whereas we know where championships are won in the NBA, we call him Mike Antoni. He would rather score 110 points and give up 109 points as long as he wins. But as we've seen in the playoffs, that formula has not been able to work, and we saw what happened in New York as well. So,
okay, so what now with the Lakers? Well, wait, before we even go there, Akil kind of just broke down the situation in-house. Of course, you have a lot of people out there who think Kobe Bryant is behind this move. Personally, I don't think Kobe Bryant is the number one player that the Lakers are out to impress these days. I don't even know if Kobe Bryant still has that type of power. At the same time, that look that he gave Mike Brown on the bench the night before he was fired, that could speak volumes as well. But what now for this team? We've established the point that they are out to win right now. B. Austin has established his point that he doesn't think the Lakers can even win right now. But when a new coach comes in here, what they've done is essentially waste a whole training camp in the first week or so of the season. Because everything they did in training camp and in practice up to this point is going to be null and void because nobody's coming in running what Mike Brown was running.
Well,
so
let me
correct.
What
now?
I do think that they, based on the talent and the veterans that they have on that team, I still think you give them 45 wins this year. I think that they could get above 40. I think they could get pretty close to 45 wins without a coach. I really do, with the talent they have. But when you transition, yeah, but we can't live off of 5 games in an 82-game season. I think that where the coach comes into play is when they get into the playoffs and teams have film on them playing a whole year. They know what they like to do. They understand their sets. And then you're talking about real strategy in a playoff series where you're going to see a team 7 times or at least 4 times. That's where I think the coaching decision really is crucial. So you want to go with somebody with playoff coaching experience. So you've got to go Phil first, then Antoni second, and Shaw third. Where do they go from now? Get somebody in the seat, man. Get somebody in the seat so that they can use that. They can use that regular season to develop chemistry.
Okay. So let's get Jimmy in on this. Like I said, I want to hear the perspective of an actual Laker fan. Where do you think the organization goes right now? And being as though it's only been 5 games, I know you think that the season is still salvageable, but do you still look at the Los Angeles Lakers as the favorite or one of the top 2 or 3 favorites out in the Western Conference?
Honestly, I've been very impressed with the Clippers. Of course, the Spurs are going to be there. You're going to have OKC. But it depends upon how this next couple weeks goes, how long they take to actually fill that seat, and how the team, plays right away after that. Personally, believe it or not, Phil Jackson wouldn't be number 1 on my list. I can see him being number 1 because, the guy has the rings. He's like, what they say, Marshall. He's one of the greatest Marshall Falcon coaches to ever coach in the NBA. But Brian Shaw is personally my guy because I think Brian Shaw not only can coach his team right now, but for years to come. I was a Brian Shaw supporter before they hired Mike Brown, and I still want Brian Shaw to be the guy. But if Phil Jackson, again, wants the job, how can you say no to Phil Jackson? He has a track record, and this team has stars. And like Dev alluded to, this is what he's known to do. He's the fixer. So I think they can win this season. Now, whether they win the whole thing, I wouldn't put my money on it. If I had to put my money on any team to win the whole thing right now, it's the Heat. They're playing lights out, but they still can salvage this season. It's not too late. It's only 5 games in that 82-game season, so I'm cool with that.
Okay, so I think they would have avoided all of this trouble if they would have just made this dude the coach in the first place.
Brendan Haywood.
Brendan Haywood cures all. So if he was the coach of Jimmy's beloved Los Angeles Lakers, they'd be all good. But on a serious note, we're gonna wrap with this. Akil, how many wins for the Lakers at the end of the regular season when it's all said and done?
52.
52 wins. B. Austin, how many wins for the Lakers when it's all said and done?
48.
And Jimmy, how many wins for the Lakers when it's all said and done?
I'm going to get my prices right, John, on. I'm going to say 51.
51. Okay, and I'm going to go with, I'll say 46 wins. The regular season will be bumpy, but I think 46 will get them in the playoffs, and I think once they get into the playoffs, they would have built their chemistry, and everything's going to be everything. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, you've been inside the war room, and until next time, don't accept mediocrity and be steadfast in that war against ignorance. Peace.
Holla.
Kuwait is the war room with 5 nights at the round table. 5 Philly guys diversified and educated.